The Young and the Restless spoilers Tuesday update full January 14, 2025 a night to remember the glow of the moonlight filtered through the sheer curtains as Claire, Kyle, and Harrison spent the evening enveloped in warmth and laughter. It was a night none of them would forget. The scent of freshly baked cookies still lingered in the air, and Harrison's giggles echoed in Kyle's ears as they tickled him before finally putting him to bed. Claire had slipped into the dynamic effortlessly, like a missing piece finally finding its place. For the first time in what felt like years, Kyle's guarded heart opened a crack, and he let the moment wash over him like a healing balm. They looked like a family, one Kyle hadn't known he needed until that night. The morning after Kyle awoke the next morning to the soft hum of birds outside the window. He reached for Claire instinctively, expecting her warmth beside him. But the sheets were cold. His eyes fluttered open, scanning the room, but she was nowhere to be seen. "Claire," he called out, his voice still thick with sleep. Silence answered him back. Kyle's pulse quickened. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand and dialed her number. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. He tried again, same result. "Claire, it's me. Call me back as soon as you get this," he said, his voice edged with worry. Something was wrong. He could feel it. Sharon's torment elsewhere in Genoa City, Sharon Newman sat alone in her dimly lit living room, the shadows of her past closing in on her. She gripped the arm of the couch, her knuckles white, as images of Cameron and Heather flared in her mind. Their voices were a sinister symphony, taunting her, mocking her weakness. "You think you can outrun your past?" Cameron's voice was smooth and venomous. "You'll never be free, Sharon. Never." Then Heather's voice joined in, more piercing. "You're nothing without us. A broken doll. How many more times will you let yourself be shattered?" Sharon clutched her head, desperate to silence them, but their laughter only grew louder, echoing inside her skull. She closed her eyes tightly, fighting to separate reality from the hallucinations, but the line was blurred. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't." Jordan's relentless pursuit. Jordan paced back and forth in a dilapidated motel room on the outskirts of Genoa City, her heels clicking against the worn wooden floor. Her mission was clear: Claire had to leave Genoa City. The reasons didn't matter, and Jordan wasn't one to question orders. She had her sights set on Claire, and she wasn't stopping until she succeeded. The night before, she had followed Claire, watching as she laughed and bonded with Kyle and Harrison. The sight of their happiness ignited a strange fury in Jordan. She didn't know if it was jealousy, hatred, or something else entirely, but she knew one thing: Claire's time here was over. Now, with the early morning sun spilling into the room, Jordan laced up her boots and grabbed her car keys. There was no room for failure. Claire was hers to take, and she would relish every moment of control. Claire's disappearance. Claire's head throbbed as she slowly regained consciousness. The room around her was unfamiliar, dark, with a faint smell of damp concrete. Her wrists ached, bound tightly by coarse rope. Panic set in as she struggled to remember how she had ended up here. The last thing she remembered was stepping outside for some air after Kyle had fallen asleep. A van had pulled up, and before she could react, everything went black. She tugged at her restraints, her breathing quickening. "Kyle," she whispered hoarsely, her voice barely audible. Harrison, Ian Ward's dangerous game in a remote cabin on the outskirts of Genoa City. Ian Ward sat at a wooden table, his fingers steepled under his chin. Across from him stood Jordan, her expression a mixture of defiance and determination. "I've brought Claire," Jordan announced, her voice steady. "She's in the basement." Ian's lips curved into a slow, malevolent smile. "Good. And Sharon?" Jordan shrugged. "She's your problem, not mine. I've done what you asked." Ian leaned back in his chair, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. "Sharon. Sharon has always been a wild card. I haven't decided her fate yet." Jordan raised an eyebrow. "Kill her or set her free, it doesn't matter to me. Just make up your mind. Ian chuckled darkly. Oh, it matters, Jordan. Everything matters. Kyle's desperation back in Genoa City, Kyle's anxiety had reached a boiling point. He paced the living room, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. He had called Claire's number a dozen times, but there was still no answer. He considered calling the police, but what could he tell them? That his girlfriend had disappeared after a perfect night? That didn't exactly scream emergency to anyone but him. Where are you, Claire? He muttered under his breath. His mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Had she left him? Had something happened to her? The not knowing was torture. Sharon's crossroads. Sharon sat in her kitchen, a knife trembling in her hand. Cameron and Heather's voices still haunted her, but now, another voice began to break through, her own. It was quieter, weaker, but it was there. You're stronger than this, it whispered. You've survived worse. Sharon closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to believe it, but the weight of her past pressed down on her like an anchor. Could she really rise above it? Could she silence the demons that had taken root in her mind? Claire's resolve in the dark basement. Claire managed to loosen the ropes around her wrists. Her hands bled from the effort, but she didn't stop. Escape was her only option, and she couldn't afford to fail, not when Kyle and Harrison were waiting for her. She spotted a small window high on the wall. It was her way out, but it would require every ounce of strength she had left. A storm brewing as the day unfolded, the lives of Kyle, Claire, Sharon, and the others began to converge like a storm gathering strength. Secrets would be revealed, alliances tested, and lives forever changed. Because in Genoa City, nothing stays hidden for long. The unpredictable Ian Ward. Victor Newman sat in the dimly lit office of Newman Enterprises, his steely gaze fixed on the file spread across his desk. Every piece of evidence, every thread he'd tried to pull on Ian Ward, had led to dead ends. It was infuriating. Ian was a con artist, a manipulator who had spent decades weaving chaos in his wake. Yet now, the man was prancing around Genoa City as if he were a saint, determined to reinvent himself as a model citizen. Michael Baldwin, seated across from Victor, frowned as he flipped through the same file. Victor, I don't get it either. He's attending charity events, volunteering at shelters, and even teaching at-risk youth about resilience. On paper, he looks perfect. Victor slammed his fist on the desk. Perfect? Perfect for what, Michael? To fool the world into thinking he's changed? A man like Ian Ward doesn't change. He's always scheming. I just can't figure out what his game is this time. Michael sighed, leaning back in his chair. Without concrete evidence, there's nothing we can do. You can't just accuse someone of being a fraud because of their past. Not in the eyes of the law. Victor's jaw tightened. Evidence or not, I'll prove he's still the same snake he's always been. Mark my words. Ian's true agenda. At the Genoa City Community Center, Ian Ward stood before a group of eager listeners, his voice dripping with sincerity. His words flowed like honey, each one carefully chosen to inspire hope and trust. We all make mistakes, he said, his eyes scanning the room. But those mistakes don't define us. What defines us is how we rise above them, how we make amends, and how we give back to the world. The audience applauded, many moved to tears by his speech. Ian smiled, but beneath that smile lay a hidden satisfaction. The seeds of his plan were being sown, and the more people he charmed, the more untouchable he became. In the corner of the room, Tessa Porter sat quietly, her arms crossed. She had come here out of curiosity, unsure of why she felt drawn to Ian's talks. But something about his words resonated with her, especially now, as cracks in her relationship with Mariah Copeland began to surface. Tessa's doubts. Tessa couldn't shake the feeling that Ian understood her in a way no one else did. Over the past few weeks, his subtle comments and gentle advice had taken root in her mind. He had a way of framing things that made her see the world differently, and not always in a good way. Do you ever feel like you're being held back? Ian had asked her one evening after a seminar. Like someone close to you is afraid of your potential and wants to keep you small? At the time, she hadn't been sure how to answer. But now, those words echoed in her mind every time Mariah disagreed with her or dismissed her ideas. Was Mariah really supportive of her dreams? Or was she secretly jealous, afraid that Tessa might outgrow her? The rift between Tessa and Mariah back at their apartment, the tension between Tessa and Mariah was palpable. Mariah leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, while Tessa stood near the window, her back to her girlfriend. I don't get it, Tessa, Mariah said, her voice tinged with frustration. You've been so distant lately. And don't think I haven't noticed how you've been going to Ian Ward's seminars. Tessa turned sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Ian's helping me see things more clearly. Maybe you just don't like the fact that I'm changing. Changing? Mariah scoffed. He's manipulating you, Tessa. That's what Ian Ward does. He finds people who are vulnerable and twists their minds to serve his own agenda. Don't let him do that to you. Tessa's eyes flashed with anger. You're just saying that because you don't trust me to make my own decisions. You always want to control everything, Mariah. Maybe Ian's right, maybe you are holding me back. Mariah's face fell, hurt and disbelief etched in her features. I can't believe you just said that. Well, maybe you should think about why I did, Tessa snapped, storming out of the room. Victor's obsession meanwhile, Victor continued to obsess over Ian's true motives. He was certain that Ian's transformation was a facade, a carefully orchestrated act designed to lull Genoa City into a false sense of security. But the lack of evidence gnawed at him. At Newman Enterprises, Victor called Michael again. We need to dig deeper, Michael. If Ian Ward is influencing Tessa Porter, then he's playing a long game, and I want to know what it is. She could be his way of infiltrating my family, who knows what that snake is planning. Michael hesitated. Victor, you're grasping at straws. Tessa isn't even remotely connected to you or your business. Victor's eyes narrowed. Everyone in this town is connected, Michael. Everyone. Ian's web tightens, Ian said in his private office, a smug smile playing on his lips as he reviewed the latest developments. Tessa was starting to question her relationship with Mariah, and soon, she would rely on him entirely. That was the beauty of his strategy, he didn't need to force anyone's hand. He simply planted seeds of doubt and let them grow. Across the room, Jordan entered, a sly grin on her face. Victor Newman's still sniffing around, but he's got nothing on you. He's desperate, though. You can tell. Ian chuckled. Let him fume. The more he obsesses over me, the more distracted he'll be from his real vulnerabilities. As for Tessa, she's coming along nicely. By the time I'm done, she won't just distrust Mariah, she'll hate her. And Sharon? Jordan asked. Ian's smile darkened. Sharon is a different story. She's broken in ways even she doesn't understand. I'll deal with her when the time is right. For now, let's focus on solidifying Tessa's loyalty. Once she's in my corner, we'll see just how far we can push her. The fallout as the days passed, Tessa and Mariah's arguments grew more heated. Mariah tried to salvage their relationship, but Tessa's newfound bitterness and Ian's influence had created a rift that seemed impossible to mend. Victor, meanwhile, intensified his investigation, determined to expose Ian for the fraud he was. But with Ian's charm working its magic on half of Genoa City, including Tessa, the odds were stacked against him. And in the shadows, Ian Ward watched it all unfold, a puppet master pulling the strings of Genoa City's chaos. This extended narrative connects the threads logically while building tension and complexity. Let me know if you'd like more.